Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Ted Turner. Success leaves clues, kids. I just named 5 of the greatest names in business in the last 150 years. And they all have one thing in common. They're ball busters. They're hard as nails. Where does that leave you? I still work 50, 60 hours a week. And I haven't had to work in 35 years. You're not willing to do anything. You're not willing to sacrifice anything to be a high-performance person.
I don't want to be like that.
No, most people don't.
I want to be liked.
Yeah, well, see, you want to fit in. I'm the only speaker that you're ever going to hear that really, with all his heart, doesn't give a shit. If I leave here you liking me, I did something wrong.
Be the kind of trader who sees the big picture. The world is changing around you. Global threats push gold, the safe haven asset, to higher prices each and every day. Now's your chance to start trading gold. Just go to capex.com and register to get up to a $5,000 bonus on your first deposit. Simply use GOLD5000 as a promo code and you're good to go. Capex.com proudly welcomes you to the next level trading experience. Register now and start taking full advantage of the new gold rush. Terms and conditions apply. Exposure to gold obtained via contracts for difference, which are leveraged products and incur a high level of risk. Capex.com is operated by JME Financial Services, Pty Ltd, an authorized financial services provider.
The champ is here! 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 The champ.
Good afternoon and welcome to Bull Market Stock Show. This is your host Rian Hobson, and we're doing today the Australian dollar. Now, there's quite some big news coming out of Australia regarding the Monetary Policy Committee that will make a speech this weekend. Surely we can expect maybe some surprises from the RBA, as according to their last statement. Now, obviously, I think it's Darby is his name. Will have a speech tomorrow. He's one of the RBA, or the Reserve Bank of Australia's. I think he's the deputy governor there, and he will make a speech tomorrow regarding the monetary policy stance of the Australian economy. Now, there's some serious up and down movements when it comes to the Australian dollar. Like, for example, today, the Australian dollar gained some actually momentum this morning, and that is all due to the good news from China. And now the Chinese news came out this morning, and the GDP is actually growing. They say also in a statement that they literally control the COVID story in China, and they're well ahead on having actually a positive 2020 according to the GDP figures. Now, the GDP growth this morning year on year is 4.9%, and the forecast was 5.1%. It's slightly off, but it's still good numbers there. And then the growth year on year was forecast at 3.3%. It came out at 2.7%. Nothing actually. It was actually a bit of bad news coming out of China, but it's not so bad. The news that actually pushed the Australian dollar up was actually the industrial production, because the forecast there was 5.7% and actual came out at 6.9%. Now that news was important for the Australian dollar and also New Zealand, or I would say your more industrial economies, like, for example, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand, and also Canada. So the commodities are actually doing well today because of that news that came out of China, where the industrial production did improve. Now, there was a bit of confusion this morning with some traders because they just went on with the GDP rate of China. The GDP figure was forecast at 5.1, consensus average at 5.2, and it came out but bad at 4.9%. Now, there was a bit of an up and down movement of the Australian dollar this morning because of this news. The GDP figures year on year came out at 4.9% less than what was forecast, and also the growth of China, the quarter-to-quarter GDP came out also slightly lower at 2.7, where it was forecast at 3.3%. Now, that news was a bit of good. I mean, was bad, but that was not the end story. The main story was the industrial production of China year on year that was forecast at 5.7% and came out at 6.9%. That was the good news for the commodity currencies and also for the commodities, especially when it comes from Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. That news, the industrial production news, is actually a good indication because it shows that the production of the industrial production is improving, so which means they need to import more commodities from these countries, especially Australia, which is their biggest trading partner, so that the industrial production can actually move forward. So it also indicates that there is a bit of a demand, whether it is domestically or internationally, because obviously industrial production is going up, so there must be some sort of demand, and that was the good news for the industrial commodities and also for the commodity currencies to go up. So although the GDP news was off or away from or was lower what was forecast, the actual news was lower what was forecast, the industrial production was the thing that actually pushed the other currencies up. So that was actually the good news from Australia. Now, the RBA also released actually some minutes this morning. That was now before the Chinese news that came out, and that caused a bit of a disruption the whole time because the minutes was dovish this morning. Now that is where the whole nonsense come in with Australia and China. I must say a lot of traders actually were very confused this morning, and as I did explain, I think it was last week, where I did explain the Chinese news are more important than the actual Australian news themselves. Now, but obviously, and I got a few emails regarding this, because at one time the Australian dollar went down. Obviously, that was now because of the minutes, because the minutes was dovish. But then the news out of China came out, which is the industrial production news, and that actually pushed the Australian dollar actually back up again. So whatever the Australians were saying this morning did not count, because it was all because of the news of China that changed the whole thing for the Australian dollar. Also, on the other part, there was also some good news coming from New Zealand. The Prime Minister was re-elected, and she is again the Prime Minister of New Zealand. Now, besides that news, the news of Australia, the minutes of this morning, and also the GDP figures of this morning actually created confusion among traders, and I did explain it last week that the Chinese news are more important than the actual news out of Australia. So please never forget that industrial production news was the news that pushed the Australian dollar up. I will just take a few minutes, and then I'll be back with you with the news of the RBA minutes, and then I will explain to you also the confusion and also how the week will look ahead for the Australian dollar.
The champ is here! 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 The champ.
Look, I'm exhausted. Had it all figured out and I lost it. They say that's the cost, but it just feels like a lot. Stop, are you going or not? I miss certainty. Miss the 9 to 5s, knowing exactly where I need to be and why I'm not built for this. Progress moves in slow motion. They're out making money and getting promotions, saying all the right things, pulling all the right levers, while I sit here, write my future self love letters. Who's winning? Is this the end or beginning? 'Cause I'm starting to feel like reality's slipping, and bank accounts, they aren't very forgiving, and life on edge feels like falling, not living. If effort brings victory, what am I missing? Nothing good comes easy. When we have to, we push through, not knowing completely. You're here because you're made for this next level, taking these places that most people won't. Start embracing it. Who cares what they do? They're not you. You'll go through more now than you think you're supposed to, but that shows you can cope with the highs and the lows, because you rose to be more. Could've run away, could've avoided the thorns, could've been comfortable. Blood, sweat, and tears, they're expendable. No more pretending, man, build something memorable. Don't drink from their cup or by stories they tell, cause when all their time's up, you'll have dug your own well. You did it. Use lifelines, you're topped off for a lifetime, so drop all those one-liners. We'll get them next time. No, this time is your time, and whatever you decide will end up being real life. No stop signs, just storylines. This whole thing is a misunderstanding, a miscalculation. Jumped and missed the landing. I'm mystified, I can waste so much time. These ovations are strictly imagination, not standing. So much for planning, guess fate left without me. Those failure statistics, yeah, they'll be about me. Was overly optimistic, forgot the logistics. Guess we all learn sometime, don't we? Good is not good enough. No, how long do I stay down before I let go? I buried my pride and took it inside, but never enough. It takes a toll, it gets old getting told you've got miles of road left to go. You're alone with this future unknown. Just go home. Just go home, it's safe there. Yeah, I'll find some embrace there. Look, it's time to admit defeat. A humble retreat, check the box and complete to my core. Intrinsically, it's not for me, I can't do this. I knew this is how it would be. No fame, no fortune, no names on marquees, just running in place every day on repeat. This is the world I wanna see, where everything's taken with no guarantees. No, come on man, pick your head off. Go back inside, half a life's learning to get up. How can I make you see that you have everything you need, and what you want to be is never out of reach? Fate deceives sometimes, but destiny's calling, so can't let the phone ring. You know there's no all-knowing. Go level up, no letdowns. Let the world in, push fear out. It's self-belief, it starts right now. When hell freezes, you lay down. Until then, it's your town, it's your story, it's your crown. Live in the clouds, feet on the ground. They stand still, you run around. Go mesmerize, or they socialize. There's dollar signs to be maximized. If you live it right, regret nothing. Loud applause, the sweetest sound. And this moment won't happen again, and never becomes forever unless you choose to begin. So see greatness in each step, and power in progress. Your future, yeah, that's limitless, it's infinite. Don't forget you want this.
Getting your business funded is a lengthy process with the banks, and it can take weeks before getting an answer. ProfitFX works with the best in the finance industry to bring you an unrivaled business funding solution for South African businesses. Our funding partners have funded millions in the last year in support of growing your business and our economy. Get in touch with your talk show host to request more information. A trade history of 3 years or more and an annual turnover of 1 million rand or more is required. Terms and conditions apply.
The champ is here! 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 The champ is here!
Welcome back to Bull Market Stock Show. This is your host Rian Hobson, and we're doing the RBA, or the Reserve Bank of Australia, news that will be released tomorrow. It's actually quite important news. Now, there was various of news that came through. That is what I explained before the break. It was Chinese news that came through, which was very upbeat, I must say, even though their GDP figures was a bit low, and also they do expect for the year-on-year growth for China will be around 2 or 3% due to this whole COVID story, and obviously a slowdown in global growth. But the minutes is the big thing for Australia, which will be announced tomorrow. I just want to actually make sure about the time. The minutes of Australia will be tomorrow at 2:30, and the deputy, the deputy governor of Australia will actually release it, and it will be at 2:30 tomorrow. Also, the RBA assistant governor Kent is also speaking at about 1 o'clock. So basically, it doesn't look good. Like two of the first time in a very long time that I see two governors are talking. That one is at 1 o'clock and the other one is at 2:30. Now, there was a lot of technical traders that did ask me last week regarding the Australian dollar, because obviously the Australian dollar was starting to go down last week, and they were asking the question, and one listener to the radio was asking the question, will the Australian dollar go to the 0.7 mark against the Australian dollar, against the US dollar? And I said that's an absolutely definite, because of the conditions that Australia is under. That is now, one is the sanctions, and also the other thing is they need to stimulate the economy. The words did come on from the last meeting of Australia that they will start to stimulate the economy. Now, today is a different story, because the Australian dollar is at 0.71. Now, I always say the forex market, whatever market, whether you look at the Nasdaq or whatever, it doesn't move in a straight line. So you must understand that the market just doesn't move down, or it doesn't just consistently go up, especially if you look at it in the short term of trading. Now, I like to have the long view of the currency market and commodity market, so I don't like the short end, because obviously you put stop losses on, and that is what I normally hate. I hate stop losses, because then you are out. Because if I put a stop loss on with the Australian dollar, it means I would have been out with my trade. So I allow it normally to run. Now, the Australian dollar sits at 0.71 against the US dollar, and is up by a 0.37%. Now, that is all to do with China. It's nothing to do with Australia. Now, I think that this story can change as the day progresses, because the expectations of the minutes will be released, or I would say the market will start to feel the expectation of the minutes later in the day, or closer to the announcement of the minutes. And I do expect they will mention there that they will have additional QE, because they use the words further, which means they, not the word further, they use the word additional. So it means that they will actually add more money to the banks, or give more money to the bank, or borrow more money, please. Sorry about that. I need to use the correct wording there. So I think they will add additional stimulus to the banks, I'm sure, or they will buy more government bonds, because obviously they said that the yield of the 3-year is very low. So they need to get that yield curve a bit steeper. They need to get it up. So it's all the Australian Reserve Bank will buy Australian bonds to try and get that yield curve up, to actually with future indication that inflation might go up and there will be growth in the Australian dollar. So I think they might go with the government route, buying more government bonds, so that the yield curve can actually go up. That is one thing. I'm not sure, I'm just speculating, because there is some strain in Australia currently, and which I will explain. So they would like to get that yield curve a bit steeper. So obviously they will go with the route with going through government, and obviously they will push through the banks. So to get the supply and the demand side right, because the supply side can come from the banks, where the banks borrow money to companies. Companies can restructure their companies, they can expand their companies, or do whatever, but at least they will start to borrow money, or hopefully they will start to borrow money to start new businesses or to expand existing businesses. That is now on the supply side. The demand side is through government, where they need to stimulate the economy, whether it's by creating jobs, maybe infrastructure jobs to get the demand right, maybe give it in a form of social grants. I doubt that will be an option. Because obviously we have a conservative government in Australia, and most of the time your conservative governments are more on productivity and not just getting money by sitting at home. So I think they might actually go with the infrastructure route, building infrastructure, maybe getting 5G done or something of the sort, to get the demand side running. Because with COVID, which is the first time in history where the supply and the demand side was literally choked. So that makes it a bit difficult. Normally it's the supply side that gets strained, where businesses close it down, supply and demand side, but not to the extent where the whole entire economy was dead still. So that is the first. So this time, yeah, it's an instant demand and supply shock. Normally in a recession, you will have companies are closing down. At least you have people that will earn your employment wages and those type of things, insurances and stuff. But this time around, it was a total shock from the supply and the demand side, and that was a big concern, and I'm sure governments across the world are still battling to get that balance again correct. So I think personally the Australian government, I don't know, will they throw the surprise tonight? It could be, or they can just release minutes, but I think they might. The possibility they might hit us with a surprise tonight could be because they do talk about the interest rates. Obviously, it's a monetary policy minute story. So I think they might cut the interest rates tonight. I don't know to what, maybe to negative, to surprise the market, because they did also explain that in the previous statement, they did explain that the high Australian dollar is a bit of a problem for Australia, which makes sense because obviously if you look, South Africa and Australia export more or less the same stuff. And with the rand very weak, it is more attractive for people to buy stuff from South Africa or even from Africa, or the country with the best logistics is surely South Africa on the continent. But I think with the weak rand, it helps to buy stuff from South Africa because of the weaker rand. Now with Australia, with that Australian dollar so strong, it can make a bit things complicated. So they need to get that currency a bit lower so that they can export more goods. But obviously, a weak currency is a temporary solution. It's not a permanent solution. I doubt anything is permanent. But that is only a temporary solution because obviously if they drop the Australian dollar, the demand increase again, and then you sit again with a strong currency. So it makes things difficult because now the Reserve Bank of Australia doesn't have much room to move because every time they weaken the currency, and at the end, you're sitting with interest rates at negative. So what do you do afterwards? So that makes it a bit complex if you try to adjust your currency to get demand from the outside world. So that can also become a complex problem. But it needs to take the RBA to think creatively in the stance because obviously they need to they need to export more goods to jumpstart the economy. Now, I did explain previously, Australia's trade balance with China actually improved in this year of 2020. It actually surpassed the normal trend. It's actually a much better year for Australia. Even though there is tensions with China and Australia, the trade balance between Australia and China is absolutely in good standing with China. But obviously, due to the crisis, I think Australia needs to get more out of China. I'm not saying they must, but to get the economy going, to get that unemployment down and that wages up so that inflation can go up, they need to get China to be more attractive to buy Australian goods. I will just take a short break and then I will explain some tensions with Australia and China, and also maybe or maybe not, we will get the surprise tonight from the Australian dollar. And lastly, how will we trade with the Australian dollar?
The champ is here! 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 The champ is here!
Greatness is not this wonderful, esoteric, elusive, God-like feature that only the special among us will ever taste. You know, it's something that truly exists in all of us. It's very simple. This is what I believe, and I'm willing to die for it. Yeah. Period.
I came from the bottom, but I'm climbing to the top. Like the test of your will, how much faith do you got? Your foot's on the line, will you ever take a shot and score the game? Winning points when it's zeros to clock. I've came to find that life's a test, there's no cheating either. Just work and stress, if no money's provided, you're eating less. Bills on the table and pain in your chest. You promise you'll pay for the things that you can't. You want the whole world, but it's burning in your hands. You ask for help, no one hears you in the stands. A crowd full of friends you can never call fam. They love you then, but they don't love you now. Your whole life seems to be crashing down. You never feel safe when there's no one around. So if you feel like giving up, you gotta stand your ground. No one else can ever try to tell you otherwise. So stop trying to be just like them other guys. Fake the haters who live in this, see you feeling like. And fuck the coaches who judge it cause of the shape of size. If you ever wanna make it, you gotta show effort and show dedication and crave it like basically nothing else matters but getting that paper and that education. Just take it from me. I ain't doing this shit. The rap with a mouth full of gold teeth. That'll show the whole world that my chain ain't so. Just let the world know I'm an OG. No, I do this for my fam, for my city, and for me. Cause honestly, I throw a middle finger up to those who don't. So if you want it, get it, don't ever give up. You got it, you wanna make it, then chase it. No one can stop you. Stop you, they're gonna hate you, but let them hate you. That's fine, cause if they stand in your way, then you gotta leave them behind. But if you want it, get it, don't ever give up. You got it, you wanna make it, then chase it. No one can stop you, they're gonna hate you, but let them hate you. That's fine, cause if they stand in your way, then you gotta leave them behind. People will always try to bring you down, but that's a part of life. Imaginary action when they see your name up in the lights. Ignore the gossip and nonsense you're hearing on the daily. Cause if it gets to your head, then you'll only end up failing. Just be the best that you can. Only those who love you will be there in the end. Stick with those in your defense and leave alone your phony friends. Stay on track, don't fall behind. Either chase your goals or fall in line. Bullshitting's only a waste of your time, so go with your gut and stay on your grind. I wanna wake up the world. Someone's gotta hear my message. This is food for your thought. Take it as easy ingestion. I won't leave you in question, just a lasting impression. I'm trying to speak the truth, so take heed to my lessons. This is honestly the most honest things I've said in a while. In life you'll always be judged, eternal circles of trials. Just keep your head up and never ever fall to denial. You're finally on the clock, meaning your time is now. If you want it, get it, don't ever give up. You got it, you wanna make it, then chase it. No one can stop you, they're gonna hate you, but let them hate you. That's fine, cause if they stand in your way, then you gotta leave them behind. But if you want it, get it, don't ever give up. You got it, you wanna make it, then chase it. No one can stop you, they're gonna hate you, but let them hate you. That's fine, cause if they stand in your way, then you gotta leave them behind.
Be the kind of trader who sees the big picture. The world is changing around you. Global threats push gold, the safe haven asset, to higher prices each and every day. Now's your chance to start trading gold. Just go to capex.com and register to get up to a $5,000 bonus on your first deposit. Simply use GOLD5000 as a promo code and you're good to go. Capex.com proudly welcomes you to the next level trading experience. Register now and start taking full advantage of the new gold rush. Terms and conditions apply. Exposure to gold obtained via contracts for difference, which are leveraged products and incur a high level of risk. Capex.com is operated by JME Financial Services, Pty Ltd, an authorized financial services provider.
The champ is here! 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 The champ.
Good afternoon and welcome to Bull Market Stock Show. This is your host Rian Hobson and we're doing the Australian dollar, or basically the monetary policy of Australia. That will be coming out with some minutes this week, and I think that will be quite important stance for Australia. I don't know, maybe they will use different words in the minutes that could actually be dovish, but we can expect a dovish tone from the Deputy Governor from Australia. Now, there's actually a lot of news that comes through that will affect the Australian dollar. For example, the one that was released this morning was the GDP figures, and then also the industrial production. As I just mentioned at the beginning of the show, the industrial production is the one that actually lifted the Australian dollar up. Then there was also surprise news that came through. That was now the retail sales year on year out of China. Now, somehow, I'm just not sure, but the domestic economy of China is actually improving. The forecast was at 1.7%, and the retail sales came out at 3.3%. Now that says a lot. It shows that the side of China, which is more your service side of China, is actually improving. So which means obviously there needs to be, as things stand, if I can figure it out, the industrial production improves, so which means there is domestic spending in China. So the domestic spending in China is actually lifting the Chinese economy. At some sense, most of the time the Chinese data, I will not say doesn't add up, but somehow, some way you could see that, hey, something is not right here. Especially when it gets to China's inflation and China's retail sales and then the industrial production. It's something, it looks like it doesn't add up to me. But in this instance, the industrial production did pick up, and also the retail sales. So it shows that the Chinese literally domestic economy is pushing the economy forward. Because obviously you must also remember there's traveling bans that go on with the US and China, and also the UK and China. Basically everybody with China, and China also have some bans with other countries. So there's not a lot of traveling that goes on. So it's definitely not the tourism sector that drove the Chinese retail sales up. So it needs to be the domestic economy that buy these products or go in the luxury industry, or I would say the service side industry, where hospitality goes on. So I think it's the Chinese, as the data shows, it needs to be the Chinese themselves that drives the economy up. Now, it's not Christmas in China, because that normally happens in December, January. So it has nothing to do with that. So it's just pure spending from the Chinese, and that is actually driving the Chinese economy up, and also the Australian dollar. Now, there's very important news that comes through this week also from Australia, and that is the inflation data. That will be on Wednesday at 2:30. Now, the forecast there is 0.3%. That is now year-on-year inflation number, which is a terrible forecast for Australia. But that is now the norm all over the world. And then you have inflation rate quarter over quarter at 1.2%. That is now for actually Australia. Now the forecast at 1.2% for quarter to quarter. Previous was at negative 1.9, and the year on year is at negative 0.3. Now, obviously, with unemployment a bit low in Australia, but I must say the employment statistics actually did improve in Australia. So we might see that the year-on-year inflation will be at 0.3 and quarter-to-quarter maybe at 1.2. It's actually a very optimistic forecast, I must say. If you look at the GDP figures of Australia, quarter 3, and also the employment, maybe I would say it could actually be the one that drive the inflation number up, but the wages is the problem in Australia. Wages is still in negative territory. You can have your job numbers up. That is not the problem. The problem is the wages is still fairly low in Australia. So that's why I feel that this numbers is a bit very optimistic, I must say, for Australia to get the inflation year on year at 0.3% and also inflation quarter over quarter at 1.2%. So it might be not, but I think the devil will be in the minutes that Australia will release, and that is where we will know, will the Reserve Bank of Australia come with aggression on interest rates, maybe go to negative territory, maybe, or go in with additional QE. There is some dire consequences on negative interest rates Because you can have negative interest rates, but what about the banks? Because that is the bank's biggest profit margin. So the Reserve Bank borrowed the money to the banks at negative rate and basically free. And then you have very low interest rates. The prime rate is also very low, will maybe just be at 0.1% for the domestic economy of Australia, which means people will not save and people will borrow more, and that could be a problem for Australia, for the banks. Now, what was also strange to me, even in South Africa, the trend is the same. In Australia, is the same. In the United States, is also the same. There is some savings that goes on. That is now in South Africa. For years now, we have negative saving rate in South Africa. All of a sudden, the latest data came out. Although it's 0.1%, but it shows that people are saving in a low interest rates environment, which doesn't make sense. When you're an economist, most people don't save. I would not say most people, but people don't save in a very low interest rate environment. In Australia, the trend is exactly the same. But Australia's savers came a bit earlier. That was starting now, I think it was 2 years ago. People were already starting to save in Australia. And interest rate is basically zero in Australia. In South Africa, it's still a bit of 6% that you will get. In Australia, it's zero. But the people are saving in Australia. So, obviously with zero return. So maybe people are expecting more trouble to come. Obviously there will be. But you basically save your money at no return. So you're just basically keeping it. Now with negative interest rates, it's rather better to put the money on the mattress than put it at the bank, because you will pay the bank for keeping your money. So, but it's very strange how people are saving up in an environment where interest rates is extremely low. It's very, very, very funny. But that is the norm currently. I think people are expecting terrible things to happen. That's why they're stocking up. Or people burn their fingers so severely that they are not taking chances. And that's why they are saving. Now, for me personally, that is crazy. Because obviously, you would think that people will go out and spend, borrow money, yes, and maybe buy houses, cars, and whatever the case may be. But that comes if you don't prepare for disasters, and then you have to save when the environment is there not to save. So always you have to be prepared for a disaster so that you can take advantage of these opportunities, like today, where interest rates are low. You're supposed to have good savings, and you can use your savings as surety to borrow money from the bank, because interest rates is at record low. But on record low interest rates, people are saving. It just shows you how terrible people are with their finances. I will just take a short break, and then I will come back with the last part with the Australian dollar.
The champ is here! 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 The champ.
They see 30 seconds. They didn't see 10,000 hours. Anyone can sail in smooth waters. Anyone can dance when the music is playing.
So is it just a run in the rain? You tell me.
Remind yourself of what that door opening is going to feel like. So I have dreams. Compulsions to be legendary, evolving from the imaginary, and it's near and it's real. I can see. In due time, we realize that real life is defined by our own eyes. And I have blueprints to the skyline. It's just reality is built methodically, and overnight success you would never guess takes a long time. You have to cut lifelines and navigate landmines, but it's your move on your cue, just decide. So I sat there, thought about it. How long am I gonna go on about it? Put my shoes on, I said so long, and went outside. Right through the field I used to run by, where the rows of sunflowers waist high, but it was different than what I envisioned. There weren't any road signs or guidelines or letters that said it's all just fine. It was just me adjusting as I made my way to the sunrise. Then I paused. On the ground below me was a little door. I knocked slowly, was pretty scared, maybe ill-prepared, but we get one life only. So I opened the hatch, looked down, and it's pitch black, no sound. And if you don't choose any road will do. I've been riding logistical merry-go-rounds and my eyes are wide. Restless soul with scores to settle from years ago. I know that there's more cause I told me so. I'm going down the rabbit hole and there's not a way out. The chips fall, I'm all in. Now my prospects are in lockstep and each step is a shakedown. I got a coat of armor, sword of steel, call to arms cause the threat's real. And see, crowns are made on battlefields, so your majesty know I will never kneel. Time to face fear right front center. Watch doubts fall like it's November. Got a treasure map in my backpack, it says life's golden. What a pleasure, been round and round and free falling now. Cause there's ghost schools and there's goblins out there. Leaving us, they call me treasonous. Think that you're dangerous, you must be delirious. Just then the guns fire and the trumpets start and the ground trembles from the steady march. And it looks bad cause their deck's stacked, but my king beats a queen of hearts. They're trying to win in spades, so I set fires with the kind of flames that forge empires. And like a hurricane, but I'm a tad insane. Cat 5, Cheshire. Right around we go, the next episode under the second story. So look out below, collect the haters' tears that makes a steady flow. And the greatest fear is I told you so. I know it though, there's no impossible. You can watch your past, you can watch it grow. Be more powerful than you will ever know. I'm going down the rabbit hole.
Be the kind of trader who sees the big picture. The world is changing around you. Global threats push gold, the safe haven asset, to higher prices each and every day. Now's your chance to start trading gold. Just go to capex.com and register to get up to a $5,000 bonus on your first deposit. Simply use GOLD5000 as a promo code and you're good to go. capex.com proudly welcomes you to the next level trading experience. Register now and start taking full advantage of the new gold rush. Terms and conditions apply. Exposure to gold obtained via contracts for difference, which are leveraged products and incur a high level of risk. Capex.com is operated by JME Financial Services, Pty Ltd, an authorized financial services provider.
The champ is here! 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 The champ.
Good afternoon and welcome to Bull Market Stock Show. This is your host Thompson, and we're doing actually the last part of with the Australian dollar. Now, there is still severe risk when it comes to the Australian dollar. Now, you still have the story with China enforcing their bans on products from Australia, which is now the beef, the barley, and also the wine industry. So and then lastly, it was the coal story. So there's still a lot of trouble between Australia and China. Then you have the COVID story, and then you have the US elections. So what the hell do you do? And then lastly, I actually forgot, is the story of the RBA that needs to cut their interest rates. So there's enormous amount of pressure on Australia and uncertainty. So obviously, as you all know, global uncertainty hits normally the Australian, the New Zealand and Canadian dollar very hard, or your commodities very hard. For me personally, I still think there is still room for Australia to go further down. That is what I think. Now, definitely you will hear it from the minutes tonight. And I think the Australian dollar will start to turn downward later today, that is now South African time, I would say maybe when the US markets are opening, I think that is where the Australian dollar will start actually to go downwards. That is now with an anticipation with the news that will be announced tomorrow morning from the Australian minutes at 2:30 a.m. Because it will, maybe in the minutes they will cut the interest rates, or they will prepare the market for a cut in the interest rates. Now, I think personally what works better to lower your currency is to surprise the market. Now, I don't know, will Australia be brave and cut the interest rates tonight to push the Australian dollar down? Because if you really want your currency weak, then normally you do it as a surprise. Because normally Australia don't cut the interest rates in minutes. Well, not what I know of. But the possibility is there that they can cut the interest rates in the minutes. So for me personally, if Australia really wants to make the currency weak, I think they need to cut that interest rates tomorrow morning. Now, will I buy or sell Australia? Personally, I am dovish Australia, and I think the Australian dollar will go down. I have a long-term trade open with them. I leave it open, and my option is a sell option. So that is it from my side. I hope you guys have a lovely Monday, and I will see you guys again tomorrow at 1 o'clock on this show. Bye-bye.
The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here!